Imagine a strict teacher who believes discipline is the key to success. Every morning, he watches the same student rush into the classroom, late and out of breath. The boy never offers an excuse, never argues. He simply bows his head and accepts the punishment. The teacher, Mr. Bradley, is growing frustrated. He sees the boy's lateness as disrespect, a challenge to his authority. One day, Mr. Bradley's patience snaps. "Connor, stay after class," he barks. The other students snicker as the boy shrinks into his seat. When the final bell rings, Connor stands nervously in front of the teacher's desk. "Do you think you're special?" Mr. Bradley asks. "Do you think the rules don't apply to you?" Connor's lips tremble, but he says nothing. His silence only fuels Mr. Bradley's anger. "I'm giving you one more chance," the teacher warns. "If you can't explain why you're always late, I'll have to call your parents." Connor's head snaps up, fear flashing in his eyes. "Please don't," he whispers. The desperation in the boy's voice catches Mr. Bradley off guard. For the first time, he notices Connor's frayed backpack, his worn-out sneakers, and those dark circles under his eyes. They aren't the marks of a careless child. That evening, curiosity gnaws at Mr. Bradley. He decides to follow Connor home. What he discovers changes everything. Mr. Bradley keeps a safe distance as he follows Connor down the bustling streets of their small town. The boy walks quickly, his head low, clutching his old backpack tightly. After a few blocks, Connor veers off into a quieter neighborhood, where the houses grow smaller and more run down. The boy stops in front of a modest, weathered house. Mr. Bradley watches as Connor hesitates at the door, taking a deep breath before pushing it open. What lies beyond that door is nothing short of heartbreaking. From the street, Mr. Bradley hears the faint cries of a baby. Through the window, he catches glimpses of Connor moving swiftly, tending to a crib in the corner of the living room. Moments later, a frail voice calls out, "Connor, is that you?" "Yes, Mom, I'm home," he replies, his voice calm and reassuring. Mr. Bradley steps closer, peering through a small gap in the curtains. He sees a woman in a wheelchair, her face pale and her movements labored. Connor kneels beside her, helping her adjust a blanket draped over her lap. "How was school?" she asks softly. "It was fine," Connor lies, masking the weight of his day with a brave smile. The boy then rushes back to the crib, carefully lifting his baby brother into his arms. He cradles the infant as though he's done this 1,000 times before, rocking him gently while his mother watches with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. Mr. Bradley's chest tightens. He realizes the boy isn't just a student, he's a caretaker, a protector, a lifeline for his family. The weight Connor carries is far heavier than the teacher had ever imagined. As the scene unfolds, Mr. Bradley feels a deep shame creeping over him. Every punishment, every harsh word, how could he have been so blind? He steps away from the window, his heart heavy with remorse, and vows to make things right. The next morning, Connor arrives at school, his usual quiet demeanor unchanged. But this time, instead of reprimanding him, Mr. Bradley greets him at the door with an unexpected smile. "Good morning, Connor," the teacher says warmly. The boy looks up, confused but too wary to respond. He hurries to his seat, his eyes darting nervously toward Mr. Bradley. The rest of the day passes uneventfully, though Connor notices something strange. No scolding, no detentions, no pointed remarks. After the final bell rings, Mr. Bradley calls him aside once more. Connor hesitates but obeys, expecting another lecture. "Connor," Mr. Bradley begins, his tone soft, "I owe you an apology." The boy blinks in surprise, unsure if he heard correctly. "I didn't understand your situation, and I made assumptions about you. That wasn't fair," the teacher continues. "I followed you home yesterday because I needed to understand why you've been coming late, and now I know." Connor's face flushes, a mix of embarrassment and anger. "You followed me?" he says, his voice barely above a whisper. "I did," Mr. Bradley admits, "and I saw how much you do for your family. Your mother, your brother, they depend on you. You're doing more than anyone your age should ever have to." The boy's shoulders slump, the fight draining out of him. "I didn't want anyone to know," he mutters. "I understand," Mr. Bradley says gently, "but you don't have to do this alone." Connor looks up, confusion and hope flickering in his eyes. "What do you mean?" "I want to help," Mr. Bradley says. "Not just me, this school, this community. You deserve a chance to be a kid, Connor, and your family deserves support." For the first time, Connor sees something in his teacher's eyes that he hadn't before: compassion. Mr. Bradley's words aren't empty. By the end of the week, the school organizes a fundraiser to support Connor's family. Parents and teachers donate time, money, and supplies, while students rally around their classmate, offering to babysit, cook meals, and help however they can. Connor watches in disbelief as the community transforms his life, lifting the burden he had carried alone for so long. Through it all, Mr. Bradley becomes more than just a teacher. He becomes an ally, a mentor, and, in Connor's eyes, a hero. For the first time in years, Connor walks into school not burdened by guilt or fear, but with a heart full of gratitude and hope for the future. The changes in Connor's life ripple far beyond what anyone expected. With the weight of his responsibilities shared, he begins to thrive, not just at home, but also in school. His grades improve, his smile returns, and he starts to engage with his classmates in ways he never had before. Mr. Bradley notices the transformation with quiet pride. He had always believed in discipline and hard work, but Connor had taught him a far greater lesson. Compassion and understanding could achieve what rules never could. One day, during a school assembly, the principal invites Connor to the stage. The room fills with applause as the boy steps forward, his cheeks flushed with surprise and modesty. "We often talk about strength and resilience," the principal begins, her voice steady and warm. "But today, we want to honor someone who embodies those qualities in ways that inspire us all." Connor stands awkwardly at the microphone, his hands trembling. "I don't know what to say," he murmurs, his voice barely audible. "You don't have to say anything, Connor," Mr. Bradley says, stepping up beside him. "Just know that you've shown us all the meaning of courage." The audience erupts into cheers, and Connor's classmates rise to their feet, clapping and shouting his name. For the first time, Connor feels truly seen, not as a struggling kid, not as a latecomer, but as someone valued and respected. In the weeks that follow, the support for Connor's family continues to grow. His mother receives assistance with her medical care, and a local daycare offers free services for his baby brother. The community's kindness lifts a weight that had seemed insurmountable, giving Connor room to dream again. One evening, as Connor sits at the dinner table with his mother and brother, He looks around the room, now filled with warmth and laughter. For so long, he had shouldered everything alone, believing it was his burden to bear. Now, surrounded by love and support, he realizes he's part of something bigger, a community that won't let him fall. And as for Mr. Bradley, he carries the lesson Connor taught him into every classroom. He no longer just sees students as faces and desks, but as individuals with stories, struggles, and potential. Because of one boy's quiet strength, an entire community learned to be better, kinder, and stronger together. Years pass, and Connor's life takes a path he never imagined. With the support he received, he excelled in school, graduating at the top of his class. He earned a scholarship to college, where he pursued social work, a decision shaped by the kindness and compassion shown to him during his toughest years. Mr. Bradley kept in touch with Connor, following his journey with pride. Their bond had grown beyond that of teacher and student. They were friends, each having profoundly impacted the other's life. One day, Connor returned to his old school as a guest speaker. The auditorium was packed with students and teachers, eager to hear from the boy who had once quietly struggled in the back of their classrooms. Now a confident young man, Connor stepped onto the stage, a smile lighting up his face. "When I was your age," he began, his voice steady, "I thought I had to do everything alone. I thought asking for help meant I was weak. But someone showed me that strength isn't about carrying the world on your shoulders. It's about letting others help you when the weight is too much." He paused, scanning the crowd, his gaze landing on Mr. Bradley, who was sitting in the front row. The teacher's eyes glistened with pride. "I'm standing here today because someone believed in me," Connor continued. "Because a teacher didn't just see me as another student, but as a person with a story. And because a community showed me what it means to care for each other." The room erupted in applause. Students whispered to one another, inspired by Connor's words, while teachers exchanged looks of quiet reflection. After the speech, Connor approached Mr. Bradley. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. Mr. Bradley shook his head, his smile kind. "You've always had the strength, Connor. All I did was remind you of it." Their embrace drew cheers from the crowd, a symbol of how one act of understanding could ripple outward, changing countless lives. From that day forward, Connor's story became a beacon for others. His journey, once marked by struggle and hardship, now inspired hope and action. He dedicated his life to helping families like his own, proving that even the smallest acts of kindness could transform someone's world. And in the halls of that old school, his name became a legend, a reminder to every student and teacher that compassion has the power to change everything. Connor's impact only grew as he stepped deeper into his role as a social worker and advocate for families in need. He founded a nonprofit organization called Second Chances, which provided resources, mentorship, and financial support to children facing challenges similar to those he endured. The organization became a lifeline for countless families. Connor worked tirelessly, pouring his heart into every case, from single parents struggling to make ends meet to children balancing school with caregiving responsibilities. Every success story reminded him of his own journey and fueled his determination to keep going. One evening, while working late in the bustling office of Second Chances, Connor received a call that gave him pause. It was Mr. Bradley, who sounded unusually hesitant. "Connor, "I need your advice," Mr. Bradley said. "There's a student in my class, a lot like you actually. I think they're going through something, but I don't know how to reach them." Connor smiled, his heart warming at the thought of his old teacher seeking his guidance. "Tell me about them," he said, leaning back in his chair. Mr. Bradley explained the situation, describing a quiet girl who always seemed distracted and withdrawn. She reminded him of Connor in those early days, tired, anxious, and carrying a burden she hadn't shared with anyone. "Start by listening," Connor advised. "Sometimes just letting them know you care can make all the difference. And if you need more support, you know where to find me." The conversation ended with a renewed sense of purpose for both men. Mr. Bradley approached the student the next day, armed with Connor's wisdom and his own newfound perspective. And as he began to unravel her story, he once again saw the power of understanding and empathy. Meanwhile, Connor's organization began to partner with schools across the state, implementing programs that identified and supported students in need. Each new initiative carried a piece of his heart and the lessons he had learned. Years later, during a grand celebration marking the 10th anniversary of Second Chances, Connor stood on stage once more. The audience was filled with families he had helped, community leaders, and educators, including Mr. Bradley. "This journey started with one moment of kindness," Connor said, his voice steady but emotional. "One teacher who saw beyond my lateness and my silence, and it grew because a community chose to care. Together, we've proven that no one has to face their struggles alone." As he stepped down from the podium, a line of children approached him, each holding a card or gift to thank him. Among them was a girl clutching a drawing of her family. She looked up at Connor with shining eyes. "Because of you, we're all together," she said softly. Connor knelt to her level, his throat tightening. "You're the reason I do this," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. Mr. Bradley watched from the crowd, his heart swelling with pride. Connor had not only overcome his own challenges, he had turned them into a force for good that touched thousands of lives. And as the event ended, one thing was clear to everyone present. Connor's story was more than just a tale of resilience. It was a testament to the power of compassion and the unbreakable bonds forged through love and understanding. As the years passed, Connor's story became a cornerstone of his community's history. His organization, Second Chances, expanded its reach beyond the state, becoming a national movement advocating for children and families facing adversity. Schools adopted his model of early intervention, ensuring no child's struggles went unnoticed. Connor, now in his mid-30s, continued to work tirelessly, but his efforts never dulled his humility. Every time he met a new family, he remembered his younger self, scared, overwhelmed, and unsure if life would ever get better. That memory grounded him, driving him to ensure no one else felt as isolated as he once had. One day, Connor received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was written on old-fashioned stationery, the handwriting neat and deliberate. The sender was Mr. Bradley, who had retired several years earlier. "Dear Connor, I wanted to put into words what I've been feeling for so long. Watching you grow into the person you are today has been one of the greatest honors of my life. You've accomplished more than I could have ever imagined. But what amazes me most is your unwavering kindness. He balanced his responsibilities at the academy with speaking engagements, consulting on policy reforms, and mentoring the next generation of changemakers. Yet, despite his packed schedule, he never lost touch with the heart of his work, the kids. One day, as Connor walked the familiar halls of the academy, he noticed a girl sitting alone in the corner of the library. Her head was bowed over a book, and her shoulders were slumped as though carrying an invisible weight. He recognized that posture immediately. It was the same one he had years ago when the world felt impossibly heavy. He approached her gently. "Hi there," he said with a warm smile. "What are you reading?" The girl looked up, startled, before slowly closing the book. "Just something for school," she mumbled. Connor sat across from her, his tone kind but curious. "You know, this library is my favorite place in the whole academy. When I was your age, I used to find little corners like this to think. Sometimes it felt like the only place I could catch my breath." The girl hesitated, her eyes scanning his face for sincerity. Finally, she spoke. "It's just hard, at home, and here sometimes." Connor nodded, his heart aching with empathy. "I understand. I've been there. But you don't have to go through it alone. This place, this academy, it's here for you, just like it was for me." The girl's expression softened, and she began to open up. She talked about the challenges of taking care of her younger siblings while her parents worked long hours, and how she struggled to keep up with schoolwork. Connor listened intently, offering encouragement and reminding her that asking for help was a sign of strength, not weakness. That evening, Connor sat in his office, reflecting on the encounter. He knew that every child who passed through the academy carried their own unique story, their own burdens and dreams. It was his life's mission to ensure they felt seen, supported, and empowered to overcome. As the Academy celebrated its 20th anniversary, a special event was held to honor its achievements. Former students, now adults, returned to share how their lives had been transformed. Doctors, artists, teachers, and entrepreneurs, all of them credited the Academy and Connor's unwavering belief in their potential. One of the speakers was Liam, the boy Connor had mentored years ago. Now a social worker himself, Liam took the stage and looked out at the crowd, his voice steady and filled with gratitude. "When I first came to this school, I didn't think I'd make it," Liam said, his gaze locking with Connor's. "But someone believed in me before I could believe in myself. That belief changed everything." Connor felt a lump rise in his throat as he listened. Liam's words were a testament to the ripple effect of compassion, a legacy that would continue long after Connor's time. As the event ended, Connor stood outside, watching the sunset over the academy. Beside him, Mr. Bradley, now in his twilight years, rested a hand on Connor's shoulder. "You've built something extraordinary," Mr. Bradley said, his voice filled with pride. Connor smiled, his eyes glistening. "I had a great teacher to show me the way." And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Connor felt a deep sense of peace. His journey had come full circle, but the work he had started would go on, carried forward by those whose lives he had touched. It was proof that a single act of kindness, no matter how small, could grow into a legacy of hope and change that would echo for generations. As Connor stood there, watching the horizon, the moment felt like a culmination. a quiet celebration of everything that had been achieved. But in his heart, he knew the story wasn't over. Each life touched by second chances was a seed, and those seeds were still growing, spreading across communities and inspiring new beginnings. The years continued to pass, and Connor embraced the inevitable transitions of life. While he remained deeply involved with the academy, he began focusing on empowering others to lead. He saw potential in the very students he had once mentored, encouraging them to take on roles as teachers, counselors, and advocates within the organization. One day, while reviewing applications for a new leadership program at the academy, Connor came across a name that made him pause: Emily Bradley. Curious, he looked through her file and quickly realized she was Mr. Bradley's granddaughter. A lump formed in his throat as he read her essay, which detailed her dream of following in her grandfather's footsteps by working in education. "I grew up hearing stories about the students my grandfather taught," Emily had written. But one story stood out, about a boy who taught him how to see people, not just their actions. That story changed how I see the world, and it's why I want to be here. Connor immediately called Mr. Bradley to share the news. "You never told me she wanted to join the academy," he said, his voice filled with excitement. Mr. Bradley chuckled on the other end of the line. "I wanted her to find her own way here. She didn't need my name to open doors, just her heart, and I see that same heart in her that I saw in you." Emily joined the academy soon after, and Connor took her under his wing, seeing in her the same passion and determination he had once seen in himself. Together, they worked on expanding the academy's programs, including initiatives that focused on mental health and career readiness. It wasn't long before Emily became a beloved figure among the students, known for her warmth and creativity. Watching her thrive gave Connor a sense of fulfillment that words couldn't capture. She became a bridge between the past and the future, a living testament to how far the academy's mission had come. One quiet afternoon, as Emily and Connor walked the grounds, she turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "You know, my grandfather used to say that the greatest thing a teacher can do is make themselves unnecessary, that the students should carry the lessons forward on their own." Connor smiled, recognizing the wisdom in those words. "He was right, and seeing you here, I think we're on the right path." As the academy continued to grow, Connor began to step back from his day-to-day responsibilities. He focused more on mentoring, writing about his experiences, and sharing the story of second chances with new audiences. When the time came for him to officially retire, it wasn't with sadness, but with a deep sense of peace. In a heartfelt ceremony, Emily was named director of the academy, and Connor passed her the symbolic key to the building. "You've built something eternal," Emily said as she hugged him. "I promise to protect it and help it grow." Connor's legacy lived on in every student who walked through those doors, every teacher inspired by his story, and every community transformed by his vision. As he watched Emily address the crowd that day, he knew that the work would continue, carried forward by hands as steady and hearts as full as his had always been. And so, the story of Connor and second chances became more than just a tale of hope. It became a movement, proof that compassion, when nurtured, could light the way for countless lives and generations to come. In retirement, Connor embraced a quieter, but no less meaningful life. Though he no longer managed the daily operations of the academy, he continued to be an advocate, speaker, and writer. His memoir, titled The Ripple of a Second Chance, quickly became a bestseller, inspiring readers worldwide with its heartfelt reflections on his journey. The book was filled with stories about his struggles as a young boy, his transformation under Mr. Bradley's guidance, and the profound lessons he learned while building the academy. It wasn't just a chronicle of his life, but a blueprint for creating change through empathy and action. With the success of his memoir, Connor traveled extensively, speaking at conferences, universities, and global summits. Everywhere he went, people shared their own stories of resilience and hope, many of them directly inspired by second chances. Parents told him how the Academy's model had transformed their children's lives, while teachers explained how his vision had reshaped their approach to education. Despite the accolades and recognition, Connor remained humble. He spent much of his time at home, gardening and enjoying quiet evenings with his family. His mother, now in her golden years, often visited, delighting in the peace and comfort that had once seemed impossible during their hardest times. One summer evening, Connor hosted a reunion for former students and staff of the Academy. The air buzzed with laughter and nostalgia as people reconnected and shared stories of how the Academy had shaped their lives. Liam, now a seasoned social worker and father of two, stood to give a toast. "To Connor," he began, raising his glass. "Not just a teacher or a mentor, but a friend to everyone here. You didn't just give us a second chance. You gave us the tools to build something better, and for that, we're forever grateful." The crowd erupted in cheers, but Connor shook his head with a smile. "None of this would have been possible without all of you," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "Each of you took what you learned and turned it into something greater. That's the true legacy of second chances." As the night wound down, Connor sat on the porch, watching the stars. Beside him was Emily, who had become not only the Academy's director, but also a trusted confidant and close friend. "You know," Emily said softly, "the world is a better place because of what you've done, but I think the most amazing part is how many others you've inspired to do the same." Connor chuckled. "I didn't set out to change the world, Emily. I just wanted to make things a little better for one kid. The rest, that's because of people like you." The years continued to pass, and Connor's influence only grew. He became a symbol of what one person, fueled by compassion and determination, could accomplish. Statues were erected in his honor, scholarships were named after him, and communities around the globe adopted the second chances model. But to Connor, the real reward was the countless lives transformed, not through grand gestures, but through the quiet power of seeing, listening, and believing in people when they needed it most. On his final days, surrounded by family, friends, and the many who owed him their success, Connor smiled. His life had been a testament to the idea that even the smallest act of kindness could grow into something extraordinary. And as he closed his eyes for the last time, he left behind a legacy that would echo for generations, a legacy of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of a second chance. Connor's passing marked the end of a life, but not the end of his story. In the days that followed, tributes poured in from every corner of the globe. Former students, community leaders, and even world figures shared stories of how his vision had touched their lives. Social media lit up with hashtags like #SecondChancesLegacy, and schools everywhere held moments of silence in his honor. At the Second Chances Academy, a special ceremony was held to commemorate Connor's life. The event brought together generations of students, staff, and supporters, each carrying their own memories of the man who had started it all. Emily, now a seasoned leader herself, stood on the stage, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. Connor always said he wasn't special, that he was just one person trying to help another, but what he didn't realize is that his belief in one person created a movement that will outlast us all. She gestured to a massive mural behind her, unveiled for the first time that day. It depicted Connor as a young boy, carrying a backpack and walking forward, surrounded by a sea of children and families, all holding hands. The mural's title was simple but powerful: The Path of Compassion. As the crowd applauded, Liam stepped forward, now a leader in his own right within the organization. He held a small, battered notebook, Connor's journal from his early days building the academy. "This journal is where it all started," Liam said. "Every idea, every plan, every dream Connor had for this place is in here. And as I read through it, one line stood out to me. It's something he wrote after his first fundraiser for the academy. It only takes one spark to start a fire that warms the world. Connor was that spark, and it's up to us to keep the fire burning." "See him." The audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation, their applause echoing through the halls Connor had walked so many times. In the years that followed, Connor's legacy only grew. The Second Chances Foundation expanded its reach to dozens of countries, adapting its programs to meet the unique challenges of children and families worldwide. Schools, libraries, and community centers were built in his name, each one bearing a plaque that read, "In honor of Connor, proof that compassion can change the world." Back at the academy, Connor's presence remained palpable. Students often stopped to touch the mural as they passed, drawing inspiration from his story. Teachers and staff shared his principles with each new generation, ensuring that his vision of kindness and empathy lived on. And every year on Connor's birthday, the Academy held a special event, the Ripple Award ceremony, honoring individuals who had gone above and beyond to make a difference in their communities. Each winner received a small silver pen shaped like a drop of water, symbolizing how one act of kindness could create endless ripples. Connor's story became legend, taught in classrooms and shared around dinner tables. But for those who knew him, he was more than just a symbol. He was a reminder of the extraordinary power of believing in someone, of taking the time to care. And so, even as the years turned into decades, Connor's legacy continued to shine, a guiding light for anyone who dared to dream of a better, kinder world.